Hello and a warm welcome to the Irish Angle, our weekly discussion show where we look back at all the things that happened in Irish racing and abroad over the last week. Emma and Johnny are here as usual. Right, we'll get stuck in. We've loads of stuff to talk about, lots of racing from last week. But one little thing first, Emma, you had a fall during the week and you had to go to a little trip to hospital. What happened?
Yeah, I took a bit of a tumble there Thursday evening. Memory's not the best now, but I'd say I get the head of a bit of a bang. But yeah, no. So I missed the show on Friday, unfortunately. But a weekend of rest and back to normal now, thank God.
Oh, good stuff, yeah. And the horse was all right too, I presume.
She was, yeah. I got back up on her, which maybe wasn't the best idea, but we made it around the second time.
Good stuff. Good to see you back safe and well anyway. And let's hope that Garrod Harney, a lad from Cork who rides for David Pipe, he took a bad fall and faking him yesterday. And they had to cancel the last race after it because all the medical people had gone off to take him to hospital. But by all accounts, he's not too bad either. And he's going to make a good recovery. Let's hope so. Look, we'll get stuck into the racing. We had some fantastic racing last week. Some of the real stars came out. Jonbon against Energamine. What did you make of that one, Johnny?
Yeah, it was a race, I suppose, Vinny, where it was. I say there's a lot about races when you have a two-horse race, and it's quite an obvious thing to say, but the market was going to be telling because in Ergamine, it was just hard to know where he was at relative to, advancing years and all of that. And Jonbon's a kind of a funny horse because he's obviously a brother to Duvan, and he's one of those weird examples, and we might talk about another one that hasn't necessarily worked out yet, but a weird example and an unusual example and a rare example of a horse who cost an awful lot of money actually repaying it in prize money and more. And it's maybe took him a while, but he's another 100 grand banked on Saturday, and he was just very good. In Ergamine, for me, he's rated 169, and he mightn't have run a million miles off his best, but he is 11 years of age now, and the market told you all, like, he shouldn't really be a 9-4 chance in a race like that if he were at his best. For me, he was beaten 6.5 lengths, never really looked like beating him, for all that it was a good effort. But Jonbon deserves a bit more credit than we give him. I think when you look at his defeat at Cheltenham, that was probably the day when, that's nearly 2 years ago now, when people would have said, like, okay, well, Jonbon has his limitations, but maybe he wasn't at his best that day. And since that defeat to El Fabiola, he's won, second beaten the neck, and won his next 5 races to bring in his career tally 17 wins and 3 seconds from 20 races. I mean, you can imagine if his brother were nearly as kind of robust and able to take his racing so well. And I think even if I had the money, I don't think I'd be as inclined to buy these ready-made horses as JP McManus is, but I think he probably feels like he just loves a winner around Cheltenham, and he paid all this money for Jonbon. But it is a rare example. Like, he's banked over 1.1 million now without winning like a Grand National or anything like that. So it's a hell of a career achievement for him. And Ergamine probably has his limitations at this stage, as you'd imagine, with the injuries he's had and his age. But it was a very reassuring performance from Jonbon, who probably looks the horse to beat now in the big one in March. For all that you'd have some reservations as to how unbeatable he would be as well, given, if the top guns turned up on the day. But it was a good performance from him. Maybe not I suppose we've had these great kind of like matches and clashes that we built up that ultimately over the Christmas and into this, they didn't really develop into much of a race, and this was probably another of them.
Yeah, I have to say I was very impressed with Jonbon. I think it was probably one of the first times I've ever been really impressed with him. He just did everything so professionally, jumped really well, did a very nice performance. I'd like him in Cheltenham now this time, and I wouldn't have been a fan of his in the past. What did you think, Emma?
Yeah, he was impressive now. Like Johnny said, he's probably a horse who doesn't get the plaudits. Like, he's kind of a serial winner. Like, he just goes out and does it. He's probably, maybe it's because of his record at the festival. Like, probably doesn't perform to the same level at Cheltenham. I know he's won a few Slur Chases around there, but probably just not quite as good at Cheltenham for whatever reason now. But like, looking at this year's field, like, there's the 3 wheelie horses, El Fabiola, who we won't see until the DRF, who was obviously disappointing towards the end of last year. Gaelic Warrior, who's a bit of an anomaly, really. If the Gaelic Warrior who shows up in the Arkle shows up against Cheltenham, you'll probably put it up to Jonbon. And an Ergamine now, who's 11-year-old, probably one stepping up in trip, you'd imagine. I thought he ran a good race in Ergamine, but just couldn't live with Jonbon. Like, Nico kind of kicked on, turning into the home straight. gave that little bit of extra boot, and Ergamine just kind of kept going at the same pace. Like he ran his race, I'd say. But yeah, Jonbon, he's class. Like you were saying, he's jumping. He's probably not like, you know, you see these 2 mile chasers like Sprinter Sacre and others, and they're kind of putting in these big sexy jumps. But Jonbon just kind of goes through the fence and he gets there really quick. Like he's not he wouldn't be quite as, I'm not sure what the word is, but he just gets the job done, I suppose.
Yeah.
But,
yeah.
Yeah, look, he's definitely the one to beat at Cheltenham now. When reading your blog today, the tide seem to be changing in favour of the British. They've got a few real chances coming up to the Cheltenham Festival, which last year they just didn't have.
Yeah, talk about another one, a 4-year-old that Nicky Henderson also brought out at the weekend, Lulamba. That was very impressive. Beats Mondo Man, giving Mondo Man £10 he was giving Mondo Man. Mondo Man was 5th in a French derby, had some very good form behind Calandagan as well during the year in Ascot and everything. This is a hell of a performance, Johnny. Did you see that? Very professional and quickened away like a good horse.
Yeah, and promoted to a short price favourite for the Triumph afterwards. I have to say I really like the juvenile division. I like the Fred Winter. It's probably the only race that they introduced in Cheltenham that I do really like from the 3-day festival. And I like 3-year-olds going hurdling. It's probably changed a bit in recent years where you get more horses to the fore who are kind of national hunt bred. And this market's been interesting because East India Doc, I felt, was brilliant at Cheltenham on his second hurdling start. He's a half brother to Verde Road. And he, for a stare on the flat, he travelled and jumped almost like a mile and 2 horse, just did everything right. And then you have Hello Neighbour, who I backed anti-post, who was good at Leopardstown on only his first start over hurdles. And now Lulamba is brought in. There's a broader point to all of this, and it's something I wonder, are we missing a trick here in Ireland? This is another horse by a stallion who was a jumper. Nirvana de Burley, who I have to say I've never heard of. I've never heard of him before, Lulamba. You have Joshua Eloi. You have these sires in France who are basically entires who go. Joshua Eloi was a maiden. Like he never actually won a race. Never won a race over fences or hurdles, and was sent to be a sire. Like you'd be laughed at in Ireland doing that. You'd be laughed at a flat maiden going to studs. Really, you know, obviously you get some horses going to stud who never race and they're there in their pedigree and so on. But this is interesting. Just another sire who was a hurdler, who's an entire. I remember Sir Eric was expected to go down that route before he so tragically died at Cheltenham. But it's something that we maybe should look at in Ireland. If you have these very good-looking national hunt horses who are, do they need to be gelded that early? I wonder, because it's a thing in France where these are good sires. Like they've made they make plenty of money. Some of them end up coming over to Ireland to be national hunt stallions. The thing in Ireland is if you're a stayer on the flat, send you to be a national hunt stallion, even though you mightn't be cut out for it at all. And a lot of these kind of Galileo bred sons on the flat, they don't actually turn out to be great stallions at all, really. And it's just something I thought was interesting. We have another French-bred horse who's by an ex-jumper. You know, we rarely get that here, but he was very professional. You know, Joe Donnelly's another good horse here. Kind of shades of Sergino about him coming from France. Very professional. But this division looks hot because you kind of think Willie Mullins might have something that he hasn't quite unveiled yet in the 4-year-old division. But it's a cracking year. And your blog alludes to a changing of the guard, maybe, you know, Vinny, that I have to say I never would have expected, certainly not in 2025.
Yeah, but just looking at that, take the Triumph as an example. Is there a case for saying a lot of these Irish horses are now going to be looking at the Boodles? Like, do you really want to take on Lulamba? Do you want to take on Mondo Man? Do you want to take on East India Dock, as you mentioned? And then you've got Palladium. That's due out on Thursday or Friday. It's entered in Huntingdon and Doncaster this week. This is the horse that won the German Derby and cost 1.4 million and still an entire. I can't see. I know you're on about this Hello Neighbour, Gavin Cromwell's that he only just about fell in the last day, but in fairness, it was a graded race, first time over hurdles and everything else. I can't see the likes of that matching these at all. What do you think, Emma?
You'd imagine Willie's going to pull something out of the bag like he normally does just before Cheltenham. So, but yeah, but I was really impressed at Lulamba. And like you were mentioning, the second horse, Mondo Man, I thought he ran a massive race as well. Like he was obviously a really good horse in the flat, rated 111, I think. Was he 4th in the King Edward behind Clandigan at Ascot? Like he pulled really hard. But he showed a good attitude. Like sometimes you get in these horses off the flat, they mightn't actually take it at all. But I thought Mondo Man, if he could settle again, he could be a right good one over hurdle as well. But that Lulamba, Nicky, I think, was trying to put water on the fire. There was kind of lots of talk about him beforehand. And Nicky was kind of saying how Gary Moore's horse should be favourite and this and that. But he showed a savage turn of foot. Like Nico asked him kind of to do as little as possible, I suppose. But once Mondo Man kind of tried to challenge again, jumping the last, he kind of kicked away. He showed a real good turn of foot. So you'd imagine he's going to be fairly hard to beat in that now. And like Nicky Henderson, when he gets a horse like this, he's really, really good at getting the best out of them for the big festivals. And like just looking through, like you were saying about the UK challengers or the UK main protagonists for Cheltenham, I think they've got 5 favourites in the Grade 1s, 4 from Nicky Henderson. So like maybe the Irish dominations was blown a little bit out of proportion last year, just when you consider the Nicky Henderson horses definitely weren't firing. And it's probably like us and Willie Mullins, like the Irish, we rely on Willie to get those big winners, but Nicky Henderson is definitely the man in the UK to pull out these Grade 1 horses, and he's got a really, really strong team this year. And that Lulamba, like he could be absolutely anything.
If you had a store horse, Emma, just going back to what I was saying there, if you had a store horse and you're like, God, this is a very good, he's a good looking horse with a good pedigree, like how much of a problem is it to not geld him? For example, so if you have an embryo good jumps horse who's very good looking, good pedigree, actually this lad might make a stallion. It does seem weird that it's so common in France and would be practically unheard of over here.
Yeah, it's like even looking at, like we're talking about an Ergamine, like what's he by horse, I can't even think of his name. I think an Ergamine's the only horse he has really, and Galopin Des Champs by Team Horse, like really doesn't really seem to mind what they'll buy when they come for France. But like if you decided to, let's say you had a 3-year-old there who's going well, you didn't geld him, like even if he wins good races on the track, like it's unlikely anyone's going to send you mares. So unless you have a good band of mares yourself, like the stallion doesn't really have much chance. So look, maybe it's going to switch. Like you'd imagine they'd be looking at the French way of doing it, but it's probably getting the support for the stallion in the first place would be the big issue there. And yeah, it's interesting how they do it in France. Like it's a totally different perspective on it. I remember the last time we were at Willie's, he was mentioning that Patrick had was it a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old that they hadn't gelded. So maybe they're thinking along those lines going forward. Yeah,
we've jumped horses by stallions who've never jumped. And that's just absolutely normal, where if they stay on the flat, they're not commercial to be flat stallions, so let's make them a jump stallion. But they might be cut out to be jump stallions at all. Whereas if you have an actual jumps horse who has size and has an ability to jump and maybe has a bit of a pedigree, and I mean, jump stallions by and large are only a couple of grand anyway. It's something worth thinking about, because we've another, he's favourite for the Triumph as well. He's not favourite for the Gold Cup. He's obviously a precocious horse, this favourite for the Triumph as well. So it's something that I definitely think we need to look at more in terms of our national hunt stallions, because it's all like, oh, he's by Galileo, he's by Monju, he's a stayer, he won the Ledger, send him. A lot of these horses aren't cut out to be national hunt stallions at all.
Yeah, it's very true. Considering as well, as you say, like they're flatbred horses, they're probably smaller as well and everything else. Like they're not necessarily the horse you'd want your mare to be going to get a Gold Cup winner, is it? Anyway, moving on with other ones from last week, more racing. Caldwell Potter, the big purchase by beaten again. Probably not a bad run, I thought. Now, in fairness, I think it was a decent race. That Gidley Park beat him 4 lengths, but they're a long way clear. 19 lengths clear of 2 horses rated 137, which makes it that Caldwell Potter probably ran to a fair rating. Whatever way you look at it, the winner could turn out to be a nice horse. I think they think he is a nice horse. So what did you make of that, Emma?
Yeah, like I suppose like life was always going to be tough for poor old Caldwell Potter after, what was it, 740,000 he cost at that Caldwell Dispersal sale. Like he was a Grade 1 winner. Like it was kind of, everyone was guessing before the sale, I suppose, how much he'd make. And it was going to be massive money anyway. And you kind of saw the horses coming before him making big money. And like he was always going to be the pick of that sale. But look, kind of like what Paul Nichols said, like he looks a good horse still, but probably just not that superstar. Like I wouldn't be shocked to see him pick up a few nice races in England, but like he's definitely not going to be at the top end of any of the top novice chases in Cheltenham, I wouldn't think anyway. But like you said, it was a good race the other day, and like he's definitely a nice horse. He's just the money around him. But like I suppose if you're looking at it in a way, like people are buying pointers for 400,000 or 500,000, like they're buying a proven Grade 1 winner. Like he's half brother to Better Days Ahead. That mare has produced some serious horses. So like I suppose he had the potential at the time, but just doesn't work out like that. I think Paul was saying they had problems as well with his feet, so like he obviously missed a bit of time. And look, it's a tough one. And I suppose when you're buying a horse like that, you're putting an awful lot of pressure on yourself as well to try and deliver. But like even looking back on that Grade 1 he won at Leopardstown at Christmas, like it probably wasn't the strongest one. Predators Goal was back in second. He turned out to be a decent horse. The race maybe fell apart a bit. Look, he's definitely a very good horse, but probably not justifying that price tag, I'd say.
I'd agree, yeah. But I think he might win a Grade 1 at some stage. Maybe not this season, but Hopefully next season. They'll get a few quid back out of them anyway. One thing, Johnny, I wanted to talk about here. You mentioned this to me during the week in a WhatsApp, and I've had a look at the race since. A race from Cork last Friday. Race was won by a horse called Warden's Whisper, but it was all about the second, Crescent Moon, Gavin Cromwell and Sean Flanagan. Now, I've watched this back, as you pointed out to me, to have a look at it, and I have to say, it looks like a no try. That's what it looks like, because in fairness, the horse travelled extremely well in the race, moves into second before the second last hurdle, loads of time to go and chase the winner, but doesn't really. And never more than just a bit of a pushing of the reins. He was never touched with the stick or anything in the race, as far as I could see. So after the race, the stewards went and they asked, they'd obviously seen it too, same as you had, and they went and asked Sean Flanagan to explain his ride. And he said the horse travelled well, but found little in the closing stages. And that's the end of it. Now, from a punter perspective, this is a drifter in the bet, and he drifted from 9-2 out to 11-1 at one stage. I think ends up 17-2. So wasn't particularly fancied in the race. But at the same time, for those who did have a bet on him, you'd be a little bit disappointed, Johnny, wouldn't you?
Yeah, she was. I thought she was mad eye-catching. Now, I was compelled to watch back her runs, like principally the run that made her very interesting on paper when she was second to Blue Mosque, and she was a hot favourite in an ace bumper in April. I think that was for 4-year-olds. And Blue Mosque actually, incidentally, at Mallow was a very impressive winner of a maiden herd not that long ago. So that made her look interesting. I suppose the one thing you would say is that day at Naas, she didn't find a great deal. Declan Lavery rode her from the front, and she seemed to kind of tie up a bit in front. And maybe that's what Sean Flanagan was doing on her. But I don't know. It was just mad eye-catching. You know, she wasn't really asked. She was beaten by four lengths by the favourite. I wasn't talking to Sean afterwards, so he might say the same as what he sort of said to the stewards. But if you back that horse in running, or I mean, if you back the horse before this, certainly if you backed her in running, I'd say she travelled quite short, because she travelled exceptionally well, travelled as well as everything really, including the winner. And it just seemed to me, I thought it was definitely my horse to take out of my horse going forward that will take out the week. Maybe there's a question that she's a bridle horse, but Gavin's horse is in such good form. I definitely think it's a race worth watching back with a view to the future. I don't know if her rating has gone up, but she'll do well not to get a hike for that. But you know, if that's not eye-catching, I don't know what is.
Yeah, I agree. Looking ahead, we've got some great racing this week coming up. We've got, as I mentioned previously, that Palladium is entered on Thursday and Friday. What's interesting there for a 4-year-old is he's in 4-year-old and up races, so he could be running against 5-year-olds and 6-year-olds, which is a little bit unusual for one of those juveniles. Constitution Hill also penciled in to race on Saturday, which will be exciting to see him back again. Let's see, has he improved from his one run he's had in the last year? Let's hope he has, and let's hope he comes out of it sound as well. And then, of course, in Ireland, we've got Thyestes Day. Always a big day at Goran Park on Thursday. Will you be going to that one, Emma?
Thyestes, I think I'm taking a horse galloping Thursday, so I probably won't be there.
Don't fall now.
But no, I'll be watching. Yeah, I was looking through it there. We were actually supposed to be doing a special preview, but there's actually a media morning in Willie Mullins's, so we'll be doing a stable tour for that instead. So form's going to be back on the Friday as normal. But I was looking through the entries. It looks like a real strong field. One that stood out for me actually for Gordon, now obviously don't know if it'll run or not yet, but Search for Glory I thought looked really interesting in there off a mark of 144. He's a novice, but Gordon has won this a couple of times in the past with novices. I'm sure Cocoa Beach and Monbeg Notorious were both novices when they won it in recent enough years. But I just think he's probably a solid enough one coming into it. He won his beginners in Galway there. He beat Sam Majest. He went on to win next time, and then he went on to the Florida Pearl in Punchestown, wasn't it? He gave Setter Story a good one there. It was the 3-1 Gordon race, and I just thought his run behind Imperial Pass as well in the Faheen Novice Chase at Christmas was quite strong as well. First time in a handicap off America 144. Like, he's probably just below that kind of real grade 1 novice level, I suppose, but I'd say he should be able to make his mark in a good handicap like this. So I'll be keeping an eye on him to see if he declared. I think he's around 20-1 now, but he'll probably be a bit shorter if he gets declared for that, I'd imagine.
Very nice. There's one I like in it too. It's one of those races, isn't it? You can stick a pin in it almost. But one I like is Grandero Bello. The Harties have this. I've mentioned this before. It's part owned by Nicky Henderson's sister, Very nice horse. It needs soft ground, must have soft ground. And I see Goran at the moment anyway, they're saying the ground is soft, and we're due a bit of rain this week as well, I think. So could remain softer, a little bit heavier. This horse won its beginner's chase there as well in soft to heavy ground. So I think that has a squeak at an each way price, hopefully. Did you look at that race, Johnny?
To be honest now, I haven't overly looked at it. I people on to me to ask Gordon Elliott about his plans on I interviewed Gordon. I think I interviewed Gordon 5 times at Navan on Saturday, and he was great value in terms of this and that. Obviously, the 4-timer. I didn't even interview him after the last race, but somebody asked me to ask him what his Thyestes plans are because he's so many in it, and I think the ship had sailed at that stage. I didn't talk to him afterwards, but obviously it's a race again where there's so few trainers dominating, and the likes of Grandero Bello. I actually put him up for the old Hennessy at Newbury, but like you say, Vinny, he is very reliant on soft ground. He was the ground at Galway on the 27th of October was pretty soft. Like it was raining that day, and it was pretty soft. He was second to the Devil's Coachman at Limerick in March 2023, and as you say, when he won at Gorn, it was soft to heavy. So like the weather's been. I never thought I'd be saying this time last year, but like a lot of the tracks, I mean, Thyestes had to reopen, I think, 4 races. The ground was good yesterday in January, and Goran, which awful problems with rain last year, obviously hasn't had nearly as much. But if it is genuinely soft and we have some rain on the way, he's very viable, and it'd be lovely to see, with respect to the big trainers, it'd be lovely to see the Thyestes go to one of the smaller yards. In recent, it's Henry de Bromhead, Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Willie Mullins, Gordon Elliott, Henry de Bromhead, and Martin Braston one of the years. Been kind of dominated by the big yards. And this used to be a race that was very much open for all the national trainers, but it's a reflection of the concentration at the top. Just on Caldwell Potter, by the way, like he's, I think one thing that should be said is that the lads who paid for him, they can obviously afford the money. So the price tag, I think if Alex Ferguson is buying a player from Man United, it's a little bit different because you have a budget. These lads have plenty of money, and they probably thought they might have a Gold Cup horse. I still don't think he's actually gotten ground as bad as he really needs. And his performances haven't been bad. I wouldn't be knocking him too much, but it's mad if you look at the Racing Post. All of the comments and the quote section on Caldwell Potter have been since he moved to England, and he hasn't won a race since. So he hasn't. Well, he's won 1 race, but he hasn't won a proper race since. I wouldn't be giving up on him. But as for the Thyestes, if it's soft ground, Vinny, I'm kind of with you. I'd give Grandero Bello a good chance. He's very good at Galway.
Yeah, and if you are looking at Goran, make sure you stick with the local trainers. They always do very well. Obviously, Willie Mullins is the main one. He'll win 2 or 3 anyway, but there's plenty of others around that locality. The Foleys and a few others that like their chances down there, and the other Mullins family members as well. But one thing I noticed there is in the entries, Willie Mullins, no entry in the bumper for that day, Thyestes Day, which I think is a little bit odd. Anyway, anything else catch your eye, Emma, from last week that we saw some good racing in Thurles, as Johnny mentioned there, with Appreciated and others winning, but anything caught your eye during the week?
It was nice to see Appreciated back. I suppose he's a horse who hasn't had a whole pile of luck. He kind of looked like a superstar when he won the Supreme, was it 2021 or even before that, but missed loads of time. I think it was his first win in, I'd say, a fair while now. Probably a bit of a race for horses who are kind of finding it hard to find places. But like even looking at him last year when he split Galopin Des Champs and Fast or Slow in the John Durkin, like he's obviously a fair horse, and hopefully he can kick on a bit from here. I was a little bit disappointed with Cargase in Ascot. I thought, I think I put up as an anti-post bet on this a few weeks ago, and she was 12-1, and she was shortening mad all week then for the Mayor's Hurdle, whatever that was about. But she was a bit disappointing in Ascot. I thought, look, she was keen. I was kind of hoping, like last year, that was her major problem. She couldn't relax in her races, and it kind of cost her in
there was a suggestion in that I don't know if this is true or not. There was a suggestion at Navan that the horse had the 2 Willie horses had slight transport issues coming over. I don't know if that were true. I'm just throwing it out there now, but the 2 of them might have better days ahead than they actually showed.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised because like last year she showed a lot more than that now. Like she was running like Sir Gino and Majesbury. She didn't disgrace herself behind those at all. So I was disappointed she couldn't pick up even after pulling. But again, she's probably not one I'd give up on completely. I think she drifted back out a bit. She went into 5-1, I think, for the Mares before that. I think she's back out to her 8th now. But I was a bit disappointed with her now. I wouldn't have minded seeing her kick on a bit. I thought Willie was kind of campaigning her a bit like last year, giving her 1-1 and then on to the Mares. But she'll have to improve a fair bit now on that, I'd say.
Yeah, you could be right. One I liked now, a horse that got beaten at the weekend in a Navan bumper, was it? Sine qua non, which is Latin for a thing that was absolutely necessary. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Anyway, that was one. This had won a point-to-point back in November, so quite recent to win its point-to-point and turn to the track. Owned by JP McManus, trained by Pádraig Roach now. I presume they paid big money because it cost 90 grand as a store before it ever ran a point-to-point, but it won a point-to-point where it made most of the running and won by 48 lengths, which I don't know how much you can read into that, but the runner-up came out the next day and won, so probably the form isn't too bad. But what I thought was they went desperately slow in that bumper the other day, and it turned into a bit of a sprint, which definitely wouldn't have suited this horse. I was surprised Derek O'Connor sat at the back, considering they were going so slow, because he'd be a fair judge of pace, you'd imagine. But anyway, he was happy to sit at the back and came up to challenge in the straight. Wasn't beaten far. It's only beaten a little over a length, but I think that's one to take out of the weekend from me. Johnny, you were talking about Crescent Moon. Was that your one from the week?
Yeah, that bumper at Navan, I thought that was just, it had everything for going for that race, because like you'd Paddy Roach Paddy wouldn't have many really good bumper horse yet. I think he's an exceptionally good trainer. Landed a gamble, actually, the horse I was very tempted to tip up on Saturday, and of course didn't anyway, just found the race impossible. Landed a very good gamble, like good old-fashioned gamble kind of on the show, and then he'd the run of the bumper. And Gordon Elliott, I spoke to him beforehand, and he was sort of saying, yeah, I'm looking around the ring. I wouldn't be putting you up back in my horse at 4-1. And then Barry Conlon had a horse in the race who travelled basically the three of them going forward. Be very interesting. Harry Swan got a great tune out of the winner, but as you say, the two horses that were second and third, that was cracking bumper. But I'm just looking at the revised ratings there. I don't think they're actually in yet, because I am interested to. I know Mark Bird is now joined the National Hunt rank, so sometimes they'll take a bit of action on horses that didn't win, and Crescent Moon is my one. As I say, there's a proviso. Like, I wasn't in the stewards room, but I was definitely interested for the explanation, because she was tenderly handled, to put it mildly, and so maybe she's a bit of a bridle horse, but she has to be well handicapped going forward. She travelled so well in the race, and Gavin has had 25 winners going into the weekend since the start of December. I don't know, he might have had more since, but yeah, she's only a 5-year-old filly going forward. She has to be very interesting.
Yeah, all those top yards are really flying. The winners in at the moment, aren't they? Willie Mullins still got a 24% strike rate this season. You've Gordon Elliott, 4 winners Saturday, 2 winners again Sunday. He's flying too, and he'll be looking for winners, I'm sure, in Gore. And he's got lots of good horses entered, not just in the Thyestes, but in other races too. Anyway, great week's racing coming up. We'll be back again next Monday for more of the same. Hope you continue watching. Do gamble responsibly, and make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.